This is Carmina, and today we are going to be looking at an example chart. And that chart is Enrique Iglesias, because you know I love my pop celebrities. Another thing that I love about these pop celebrities is that they have a recorded birth time, which is very precise. So that's always a good thing when studying astrology or the cards of truth system. So before we get to the actual chart analysis, you might want to subscribe to the channel to see more videos on these topics. You might want to give this video a thumbs up, even if you haven't seen it yet, because I have a trustworthy face. And yeah, enjoy. Okay, so Enrique Iglesias was born on the 8th of May 1975 at 8:17 p.m. in Madrid, Spain. And I'm going to share with you his birth chart. The layout of the chart will be a South Indian layout, so don't worry, I will explain everything. And then we're also going to be looking at his cards of truth. And with that, we're going to be timing some important events that happened in his life. Okay, so this is Enrique's birth chart. As you can see, he's a Scorpio ascendant. You see this double line with the sign of Scorpio. This is the ascendant degree, 6 degrees, 56 minutes. And then, we use the whole signs, right? So since the ascendant is the Scorpio sign, the second Bhava, which is equivalent to the house, is Sagittarius, and so on and so forth. We see here all the signs. We go in a clockwise direction. So what can we say about his personality just by looking at his chart? Well, we can say that he's a Scorpio ascendant, and his ascendant lord is in the 5th house. So that's a great combination. It's called a yoga. It's a great yoga because the ascendant lord is an angle lord, and the 5th house is a so-called trine house. And the 1st and the 5th house are both dharma houses, which show the person being anchored on their path and doing their own thing, being themselves. So this person has a very creative path because the 5th house also shows your creative endeavors. This person's ascendant Lord Mars is in a great friend sign because Jupiter, the Lord of Pisces, is a friend to Mars as a natural friend, and also because it's in the 2nd house here from Mars, it's also a temporary friend. So that makes Jupiter a great friend to Mars. And this is a combination for success in his chart. Ascendant Lord in the 5th, Dharma and Angle Lord in a trine. Great combination. What else do we have here? We have his North Node in the 2nd house in Sagittarius and South Node in the 8th house in Gemini with Mercury and Venus. Mercury in Gemini, of course, it's in its own house, it's in its own sign. And Venus, it's in a neutral sign because naturally Venus is the friend of Mercury. But because they are in the same sign, it's too crowded in there, so they're temporary enemies. So the temporary enemies plus natural friends equals combined dignity of neutral. But what does that exactly show about Enrique, like practically? Well, the South Node always shows where you are coming from. What are your patterns, your deeply ingrained patterns that come from your ancestry, your lineage, or your past lives, or things like that. And for him, it's a Gemini and an 8th house thing. Well, Gemini is about being practical, and people with South Node in Gemini are very good at discerning things, very good at being good critics, at judging things. And Mercury there, of course, also helps, but Mercury with the South Node makes the person want to, you know, do things perfectly. And that can be frustrating for them a lot of the time. A Venus there with the South Node shows that the person, you know, has a very strong connection in the past life with, you know, with women, with the feminine energy. And in this life, he can only make relationships work if he cultivates also a relationship with the divine. Like he shouldn't be looking for the divine, for a divine connection in a worldly relationship, because that's only a guarantee to unhappiness. It also shows like hidden affairs, because Venus, of course, is a planet of love. It also rules, you know, like relationships. And in the 8th house, it's a lot of radical changes, a lot of breaks, a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of occult and hidden things. Like hidden things, it can be hidden affairs. You know, his father, Julio Iglesias, was also a ladies' man. And Enrique, he said, like, before meeting his partner, Anna Kurnikova, he had like 50 girlfriends. So he was like 26 or 27 when he met Anna in 2001. And he said that he would have never thought that he would be with a woman for such a long time, because they've been together for 18 years, since 2001. So it's almost 18 years. And what we can also see here that, okay, so because the South Node is in the 8th house, in his past life, he used to rely a lot on his family's, his partner's resources. And because the North Node is in the 2nd house, he has to do things by himself. He has to forge his own path, especially because the North Node is in a fire sign. And it's really interesting that I read when he came out with his music the first time, he didn't want to use the name Iglesias, because he didn't want to be associated with his father, and he didn't want, you know, his father's fame to help him. So he changed his name. He published a record under the name Enrique Martinez, and he created a story for himself that he is from Guatemala. So that would be a perfect example of a good North Node in the 2nd house, because the 2nd house is also your name. So your North Node there would be like an artificial name, because the North Node is always something artificial, something that you change. So changing his name like that was a very good move for him on his North Node path. So he tried with a lot of famous recording companies, and he didn't get it. Like, he was refused by so many famous recording companies. Finally, he was picked up by a smaller company, and he had, you know, some success. At some point, he came out with his real name, Enrique Iglesias, and of course, he was talented, but I'm sure that his name also helped. So that's the trick with the South Node. In his case, the South Node being the 8th house. Like, your background, your family will help you if you forge your own name. So you can only access the South Node, like the skills that you've developed, that you've perfected during past lives, only if you try to go out in the unknown territory of the North Node. So which he did, which he didn't want to become famous because of his father. He wanted to become famous for himself and through himself. So that's why at that point he dissociated himself from the name Iglesias. And that proved quite helpful and successful in his case. And of course, because he's a Scorpio ascendants can seem pretty shy, but his Mars is in a great placement, so he's also very courageous. He's pushing things forward. And Mars being in Pisces, he also has this more softer, this more gentle connotation. Like, he's not pushing in an aggressive manner, but he has this soft way of moving. That's what Mars in Pisces does. And it's also interesting when I read his biography that I didn't read his biography. I read his Wikipedia page, let's be serious. That he was very influenced by his nanny, because his parents broke up, and even when they were together, they both were public people. They had, their own schedule. So their nanny was the one who was with them until their teenage years, until their early adulthood. And she was like a mother to them. And it's really interesting that in a chart, you see the stepmother, because the nanny was kind of like a stepmother. You see her as Mercury, and you also see her at the sixth lord. Yes, so the nanny is the sixth lord, which is Mars, which is also the ascendant lord. So, he really connected well to his nanny. And also you see here that another significator, another manifestor for the stepmother is Mercury. And Mercury is there with the south node and is with Venus, and Venus is his soul planet. So you can see that these significators for another feminine influence that's like a mother but is not the mother, in this case sixth lord, which is Mars, which is also ascendant lord. So these significators for the nanny are connected to the significators for the person. And I'm saying that Venus is his soul planet, is a planet that has a great importance in his evolutionary path, because it's the planet with the highest degrees in his chart. And of course, Venus is the planet of entertainment. So I was talking about this nanny for a specific reason, because in order for him to make his first demo tape, he borrowed money from his nanny. Like, nobody knew about it. His family didn't know that he was making music. He had to borrow money from his nanny. So you see here Mercury delighting Venus, the nanny helping out Enrique, which is Venus. And here also, fifth cusp of creativity, sixth lord in the fifth, the nanny supporting financially the person. So I think it's great. I think it's a very fascinating story of how this happened. I think I'm going to split this video in two parts, because otherwise it's going to be seeming too disconnected. So in this first part, we looked a little at his chart, we look at his nodal path. And then in the second part, we're going to be looking at the cards, and we're going to be timing some events in his life with the help of the cards of truth. So stay tuned for part 2. I have some astrology and card classes coming up next year, starting January, respectively February. You can check out the links below. And if you don't have patience for astrology classes, you can always get a reading from me. Just check out my website. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit. Bye.